What is up, everyone? James here again. Um, just going to do my analysis for the week. Got to keep it high level. We've got, I think, 10 pairs to look at, so I don't have time to go deep into all of them, but I'll just give my high level thoughts and then leave it to you to drop down to the 4 hour, etc., and see what you think. So we're starting. I've just got a green list and a red list, and that just means buys and sells, just to keep it organized. And then eventually they all get lumped into a single list of the ones I like. So right now, at the beginning of this week, these are all the potential weekly fractals that have a buy. So you can see down here. Here's the fractal potentially. Here's an engulfing candle, and then here's this week's candle. So if this week's candle were to break below this low, it would become, this would not be a fractal, right? Very simple. So basically what I'm looking at here is that I like AUD Chef. The reason I like AUD Chef is because it has given me a buy signal in an uptrend. It is building liquidity above. It has already kind of dipped down and taken liquidity below. This is on a weekly scale. And then we had a big impulse last week. So that big impulse did not break the high, and we're in an uptrend. So we'd either have to expect one of two things to happen: a continuation of this uptrend, a topping formation, I guess three things, or a complete breakdown in price. It's not very common to see a big up candle followed by another giant engulfing down candle unless there's some reach above into liquidity. And on the weekly scale, there really isn't. On the daily scale, there's a little bit of reach into liquidity, but I still think it's in an uptrend. So then just dropping to the daily, the one thing I like to do here is to know like right here. Oh. So basically, I'm looking at that on the daily and saying, okay, if price were to drop below that level, that weekly fractal is no longer valid. So I really shouldn't be thinking much past that line, if that makes sense. So what I'm looking for here is like, where does it retrace to during the week to then provide my buy opportunity on the daily or 4 hour, etc. Or should I just jump in right now thinking that this is going to be an impulsive move up? Usually there's some overlap in the candles, so I wouldn't just jump in at the beginning of the week. But looking just at the daily, I would probably venture to guess that in this area, there is some work that needs to be done. Just that push up, that really weird wick right there on both sides. I'm going to guess that that did some work down there, and then we took off from there. So that would be where I would go investigate on a lower time frame to see if it makes sense. Again, we have to have an expectation of the weekly. We can't expect the weekly to travel really far down and then back up. So if this is traveling down, maybe by the end of the week we get here and then we buy up from there, or midweek we get there and then we buy up from there. That's all dependent on whether or not liquidity gets taken above first. So if liquidity gets taken above first, then I would be reconsidering this buy opportunity because liquidity's been taken above to carry down. They've already dipped down here and provided us with this weekly fractal buy opportunity in an uptrend, so I like the buy. So that's what I'm going to be looking for, is this area on the 4 hour, and then marking up the general locations like wick to wick. So on the weekly, it's pretty common for this candle to just come down to the wick of this candle and then make its way up. So I'll check to make sure if that's a possibility. And then stuff like the body of the previous candle here, it's common for this candle to come down body, wicked body, and then back up. And the last one is like 50% of that previous candle. And if you look, it holds pretty true. You can see here we had a little weird break where it dipped down, this one, and it gave us the fractal buy opportunity. This one dipped down about 50%. This one went all the way down to the bottom of that wick, if not a little lower. That one went down more than 50%. That one down to the body before going up, right? We had a bit of a retracement and now an explosion. So I think it'd be reasonable to think that this week could travel down this far and then back up. So those are the general areas that I'm going to do analysis on and see if there's anything that makes sense in there. And as this price travels down through the week, I'll be looking for these areas to react. All right, AJ, I'm trying to keep this under 30 minutes, so I'm talking fast and moving fast. So we're presented with a weekly buy opportunity right here. And this one is also kind of still in an uptrend, but it's a little different. Like this doesn't look like a pullback to me. This looks like more of an accumulation that would then have a price collapse. So I would expect something more along the lines of this to happen. And this is just by eye, right? And so because I think this, I'll probably discard this pair until I get a reason to enter with a different methodology. Because for fractals, this would not be valid. I would be looking for a buy opportunity, and it looks like they've created liquidity above, below. They've just pushed up over to make potentially an FU candle here, and then probably collapse to grab the liquidity down below here. That's just by eye. It's obviously, it'll stay on the list, and I'll keep up with it through the week. But right now, I kind of don't like the way it looks. You can see a chef is a little different. Like that is a flag down, impulse up. That's not an accumulation, right? That is a very sideways accumulation. So a little different. Buy opportunity presented on CAD CHF. I kind of like. I don't see much issue. We just kind of have to figure out where it's going to retrace to, which looks pretty clear. So let's do our process down here. That darn thing. Okay, so we want to know where would the fractal be invalid? It would be invalid at that level. Where's the wick of the previous week? It's right there. Where's the 50% of that previous candle? It's about there. You can be super precise, but I just eyeball. It's about there. I'm looking for a zone, not a pipped value. And then the body, but this doesn't look like it would do the body on this one. So you kind of get an idea of where to expect. You should not expect price to go below this point, or the fractal is invalid. We should potentially retrace into somewhere in here, potentially down into here. And this is where, you can start using fibs if you think this is the high of the week for now and that we're going to retrace for the week and then move up. So right in here makes sense. You can see the 71 and the 68 line up pretty good with stuff. And by stuff, I mean this last down candle before this up move, and the little bit of imbalance that exists in between these two candles is worth looking at on a lower time frame. Let's see if that's true imbalance. Okay, so just deleting these references. I'm going to leave this one because the high of the wick is very common, and it's pretty much 50%. So there could be something in here worth looking at. If it gets down to this level, I'd assume it comes down to here also, but you never know. So that's a very high level. So you can play that two ways. You can either try to sell into this area, or you could wait for it to get down here and buy. But I usually expect it to happen within a week, to have price come down into some area and then pull away and continue the trend. And then we've got this crazy big volume candle back here for a couple weeks where we bought up and sold off, and we're potentially approaching it in some respect. So who knows? It's worth going back and looking at. If you're going to take a buy, go look at that candle on a lower time frame and see if there's some type of banker's candle or something. And if you're going to take a buy, don't expect price to move up past that point, right? You should take your profit by then, because that's when we get uncertain about whether we're going to pass that point, retrace, and then keep going, or collapse completely. We don't know. So I would be looking for a buy opportunity in here with a take profit in that general area after doing a little more analysis. That is my area of interest. Blah, blah, remove all that. So we have a buy fractal in an uptrend that has just broken liquidity. So last week we kind of pushed up over everything, broke liquidity. We've got definitely this candle to think about. That is an up before down all day long. The fact that we bounced off this level a couple times and then pushed up through it means we eroded through the contracts. There were contracts sitting at this level and we've eroded through them, right? So people were selling at that level, 8217-ish, and basically those contracts have now eroded, and we would be looking for a pullback and then a buy opportunity. This is a threat. So do an analysis there to see if you want to try to buy up through that, or if that's going to be a reaction for a down move. Just because it's a green signal doesn't mean you have to take a buy, but I kind of stick to that just for my own sanity. That way I can just weed out stuff that doesn't make sense. All right, so that's worth looking at. These are all of the sell fractals that have been presented on the weekly. Get rid of this junk. I like this sell fractal. It has broken liquidity high. Well, maybe not quite yet. If you look at that on the daily, it looks a little different. I mean, it just peaked up over last week. But let's do our reference lines. We should not expect price to move above that point. We should be looking for maybe the 50% here, which it looks like we kind of already hit. And we've got a pretty good target even on the weekly scale down in here. Worth the attempt to sell? I think so. I'd wait for the week to develop first, because this could be misinterpreted as, I mean, I could be misinterpreting this. This might be equal highs, and we could push up through them to get liquidity to bring down, right? So there could be a big FU here. This could be the reaction for sell. If you look at it right now, it kind of looks like topped out, eroded, reacting from here, potential sell-off. So there is a trade possibility in this yellow line area, but I'm going to wait probably till Monday and try to catch the downtrend when it occurs, if it occurs. Weekly sell. All right, so that is our fractal high. It collapsed away. Not really showing its hand, right? It hasn't exactly collapsed down below this previous low, but it is in a downtrend. There's too much risk here for me. This is an aggressive sell-off, and we've definitely done something back here. I would classify this more as a buy opportunity on this fractal, meaning this candle did the work that was required, and we're sitting in a potential buy opportunity. And you know, that's why I kind of weed these out, because the fractal's telling me something different. It's telling me to sell, which could be very, very valid. We're in a downtrend. There's nothing to tell me this is a reversal point other than this. I don't like to, I've learned my lesson not to play reversal points. I want to play the trend. So not interested in a buy right there. So if we want to do the same exercise, there is the fractal high. So if that gets broken, this fractal's not valid. And is there some reason to come up here for the week? I mean, I guess we could move up for the week in general and then sell off from here. The reason I'm hesitant about this is because it looks a lot like the beginning of a W pattern. It looks a lot like something that could happen like this. And then an FU occurs, and then this happens, where it actually wants to go up, but this is a false bottom. So the sell could be valid, but I wouldn't think that it would be a long-lasting sell. This one I'm not so interested in. I don't see as many characteristics as I'd like to. I'm going to put it on a purple list just to keep an eye on. EuroCAD is telling us we should sell, and well, I don't see a big reason not to. This is pretty characteristic of the pattern I'd look for. We kind of are in a downtrend. We've broken this previous structure. So this is all sideways accumulation for weeks. We pushed up over it. It looks like this weekly candle here interacted with potentially something back here. We pushed down, we broke the lows. We've come up, and then using my eye on the daily, I can see that this candle, which is the high, the sell fractal that's being presented to me, has interacted with this last up before down collapse, and there's not much above it to worry about within the most recent high. So I would go ahead and say that that sell, I would look for a retracement and a sell opportunity. The risk is that this was a grab for liquidity, and this push up is telling us that we're going to just bounce here, go up here, and just keep bouncing up and down. So for me to play it, I would need to have, I guess pretty much this line right here would make sense, right? Like this gap. And that's in concert with sort of that area, right? The wick to wick, 50%-ish zone of this candle. And it makes sense that this candle could make its way up to here and then push down just to continue a down structure. There's a lot of reasons to get to here, right? I don't know how they'll get there, but there's a lot of reasons to move down. And well, there's one big reason to move down. There's this. This whole thing is a great target. You can also see that price has been moving pretty sideways. Momentum has been slowing significantly. It's about to flip. The MACD is about to turn red potentially, which is kind of a big deal. It's already red on the daily. Definitely worth looking at the 4-hour on this one. EJ, we have been presented with a sell fractal, but it didn't really, this is a little too delicate for me. Like, yes, so if you follow price, push up over into liquidity, take those contracts, carry them down, fill imbalance down to here. This fractal was created basically as a pullback, right? This would be a pullback on the daily. And then basically this is sideways. I mean, this looks like a mitigation, but I think this push down may have been the actual mitigation. So I would say it's a little risky. Like where would it, I guess I'm saying is it's pushing up right now for the week, and we just don't know how far it'll push up. It may push up over these points to get to liquidity, or use your own judgment, right? This could have been it. In which case, this would be a good sell opportunity. Oops. Right, because this is the wick that this is the banker's candle that pushed up over liquidity. This obviously carried liquidity down below here. This pushed up and reacted. So this would be like the second entry opportunity. And you would be looking at something like this to sell from this area down. So that seems pretty valid to me. I would take a risk on that. It makes sense. Looking at the daily, there's some leftovers down in here. Bit of a gap in here. Well, that just recently got filled. So that is a liquidity grab, and also you can see that it went up and down a few times. So that means that they accumulated in there, but they created this liquidity so that they had a reason to come down here, contracts to buy up from to fill this imbalance. So they basically filled that imbalance. But it's classic signature if you want to try to sell it. I mean, there's risk in everything, but it presents as a sell opportunity. GCAD, fractal high. That fractal high just took out a bunch of liquidity above here. So just with the eyeball and the cursor, is that fractal going to be maintained and respected? And then what would the target be? So I think I already have this marked up as kind of like a why haven't we come back down here yet? It looks like we should have to come back down here. It definitely took liquidity below here. And then the thing we should expect would be not to break this high. And right now it's presenting as a green candle for the week, which is good because we want this to become the wick of a red candle. Previous doji helps us understand that there was indecision, and basically we opened and closed at the same price for the week. So there was volatility, but for the week, there was pretty much no price movement. So that tells me that buyers and sellers were in conflict for the week and made no traction. So one side's got to win. It's in an uptrend, so it's hard to say to sell, but it does look like it just took this liquidity and has a reason to go down to this point. So if I was going to take a trade, I would look to target this area, have my stop loss over this line, and look somewhere in current price to sell from. It looks like it's reacting here right now, but it also looks like it came down and reacted here. So I need to see something that tells me we're going to continue down. There's plenty of meat here to get in, and this does not have to be your stop loss edge. This is just on the daily, weekly look, right? So if you get down here and you see that it's all clean and that we're obviously going to be moving down, then maybe you can get in on a tighter stop loss. So I like that one for a sell. I'm going to keep it on the list. I go back and put alerts on all these so that I don't have to maintain them. I just wait for an alert to go off and then come back and do the work. GU is presenting a sell, potentially a sell fractal. I don't like it. This is a creeper. So it's creeping up. It could very well be the peak, but as we all know, the peak does not happen gently, right? You can climb the mountain, but once you get to the peak, boy, is it difficult, right? So I would expect this to jut up over, break that fractal rule, and then drop like a signature move, or however you want to call it. This definitely looks like a channel. This looks like a channel. We've dipped down to carry this liquidity up, and then we'll most likely break over this liquidity to sell. So if you're going to play it, you can play the sell, but this fractal won't be valid once you get to it. We'll most likely break that fractal high, and then we don't know if it's a real sell or if it's just the retracement of an expansion, right? So it has a little too much if to it. For that reason, I'm going to put it on the purple list. I'll keep an eye on it, probably put an alert on it, but not look to actively trade it unless it gets way better looking. And you presenting a potential sell opportunity. So I had mentioned attributes about the other pair that I didn't like to sell, and in conflict with that, I'm going to say the same attributes for the reasons I like the NU sell. The reason I like the NU sell is because it topped out pretty well. It's accumulated. And let's go ahead and draw some reference lines, right? So this would be the fractal high we'd expect not to be broken, which is kind of hard to say. To say we're going to go this whole week without going above that line, or that we're going to break below that line, there's plenty of liquidity up there to be taken. I would be more interested in that being a line where we break over it and then sell off. And the reason it's a little different to me is because this looks like it's rounded over and flattened out. You can see the MACD has started to drift down, but price is moving sideways. Definitely worth looking at the 4-hour MACD and looking for potentially something like this to occur. That looks pretty reasonable to me. The wick of this candle breaks over to get into liquidity and then sells off. And the question becomes, how far does it sell off? So that analysis is the second step to, well, what's my target? And if I'm looking on a weekly scale, this candle down here, followed by a massive up move, no red candles at all. Some of them looked red at the time, but they turned out green. Peaking out, collapsing off that level, coming back up to test that level, and selling off seems reasonable. I'd just be looking for a clear target to the low side, which could be as simple as the liquidity on the other side of this channel, right? They could just target that liquidity and then move up. That's why you got to be thinking about where's your take profit and your stop loss to make sure it's worth it. I'm going to keep that on the list. Even though it's counterintuitive, I like the sell, and I like the fact that it is showing that it's rounding over. Selling USD CAD. Man, it's already sold off so much. It would be considered in a very good discount zone, and it's accumulating. You see how it's moving sideways in here. It's not wanting to give away the move up. I think that's what it's doing. Like, it looks like it's accumulating in here, and then we see a little bit of volatility happen on daily candles at the right spot, and then we move up. So I do not like the sell. It's stuff like this that bothers me, like this candle right here has reacted from that candle back there, and then there's a lot of reasons to move up. I wouldn't expect this weekly candle to get this big, but we've reacted off of a previously unmitigated candle. Yeah, that was in liquidity. We're gathering liquidity right now. So this could be the beginning of a Wyckoff on the weekly or even the daily. Right? Push up, push down, push down. This is up. We might expect some sort of violent push down or just to here. Like if I were to put an alert for an entry, or it would be somewhere in there. I'd just be looking for it to move down to here and then buy. So if you want to think of it as a sell opportunity, you could be looking for a sell, but I would not expect price to move past that point. So make it worth it. If you sell, don't expect price to get below there. That one I'm going to leave on the red list and put an alert on, and that's it. So that is basically what the fractal analysis is. Every Sunday I do this, and then throughout the week I'm looking at lower time frames, which I haven't made a video for yet, but I probably should. Alrighty, that's it for this week. I'm going to go through these lists one more time so you can see. So here's all the green ones. These are all the buy opportunities. Here's all the sell opportunities. And here's some maybes. Alrighty, those are the ones I'll be looking at this week. Take care. Good luck. Assume all risk. I am not a professional trader. Yada yada yada. These are not ideas. This is just market analysis. I'm not telling you to buy or sell. I'm just telling you what I think is going to happen in the market. Have a good one.